This is Rebel Rousing Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Tornado Tony Penny.
And Psychic Tom Hedger. First of all, ready to go.
All right, no more tax man. It's all about the psychic now. His airwaves and his brain waves will not be interfered with anymore. He's got to make 100% predictions.
Yeah, start using the right side of my brain now instead of the left.
Well, anyway, we have a pretty big UFC card to talk about. Tom already told me he thought I made a spot-on prediction. But, I basically just based it on the last two fights. It wasn't really anything magical. And it turned out the way I predicted. Oliveira was definitely the more experienced. He brought Chandler to deeper water. He got tagged up a little himself. He was bleeding. Chandler, made the most of his explosiveness early, but he just could not overcome the reach advantage. And his wrestling really didn't help him much at all because, the jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Did you know, Rich, that I think either two of the judges or all three of them had that first round 10-8?
Yeah. Unreal.
Now, can you believe that? I mean, okay, I could go with 10-9. Not arguing that, but wow, it's a good thing Oliveira. Wow.
Yeah, it was scary for me because for a second there I was like, well, I hedged my bet because I said Chandler could win early. But then
early on.
I just was like, I could not lose faith in Oliveira. He looked rattled for maybe like 10 seconds that whole first round to me. And then he just got his distance or he wrapped him up when he was on the ground and just bought himself enough time to shake off the cobwebs, and that was enough. And that just totally defeated Chandler.
And it
took his will away.
And it was such a wonderful clash of styles.
Yeah.
Wild intensity, and then the pure, almost like Alexis Aguayo-like.
Yeah.
Aguayo was just such a technician, almost a robot. So he was so good.
Yeah.
And, fighting like a Mancini or something, this brawler guy coming in. But in the co-main event, wow.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think I sort of kind of saw the writing on the wall for that one, too. I said, Tony Ferguson's really going to have to reinvent himself. And one thing we didn't get to talk about before the show was I didn't see that there was an article that Tony Ferguson had actually trained with Freddie Roach for this fight. And, it didn't really help him against Beneil Dariush because Dariush has a style that reminds me of that Colton Smith dude from The Ultimate Fighter. He just holds you directly to him. There's a little bit of Demian Maia in that too. When he was in his win streak, he was like the human backpack, and he was just able to totally negate all of Tony Ferguson's strengths in that fight, and just proved to be like a wrestling, grappling, jiu-jitsu workhorse. I don't think Tony
won a minute.
No.
I don't think he won a minute of that.
No.
And the scary thing is, look at how quick his collapses come. Overnight.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah, somebody made a good point on a Facebook post about it. They said that basically, while Tony was coming up, nobody had ever seen his mix of style. But once he got to the top 5, it was like he hit a brick wall because maybe his style was good enough to beat the mid-level guys, but it was never good enough to beat the top-level guys. And that made a lot of sense, no matter how he reinvents himself, his skill level is just never going to be there. And I really thought after this fight, his body language seemed to be waiting for an interview. Because if Joe Rogan had put the mic in front of his face, he might have retired, I believe. Right there. That's what his feeling looked like. When he was just looking down at the ground the whole time and, knew he'd done so horribly. And he just didn't look like he was in it anymore. And, maybe thankfully, Joe didn't put it under his mouth because maybe he's got another fight.
Though, could be another example of a guy that could get away with unconventional stuff when he was younger and just not a super technician.
Right.
You're not in that league. But, when those guys get older, they just can't pull it off.
Yeah.
And
Before that...
I mean, yeah, good for Dariush. I mean,
we had,
good for him, but...
Yeah. Oh, also, Dariush used his time on the mic to make a unique call-out to Elon Musk. And you get what you ask for, because he got a loaner car, basically, for free while he's waiting for his order. But almost immediately, Elon Musk tweeted out a response apologizing for the delay. So, I mean, it was instant.
So, Elon Musk must be an MMA fan, huh?
Oh, yeah,
that? Maybe he was watching.
He was at one of the ones earlier this year, I believe. He was at one of the events, but he found out because one of his Twitter feeds had posted it. You know, it was like anytime Elon Musk or Tesla comes up, you know, it comes out and it automatically posts on his Twitter feed the story. So as soon as he called out, there were stories that went out. So it just went out on his Twitter feed, and then he checked it later. He said, "Oh, geez, you know, I got to take care of this kid. It's going to be a bad PR hit if I don't." But anyway, Rogerio Bontorin also on the card, beating Matt Schnell by UD. Caitlin Chukagian, what a little great scrapper she is. She took care of Vivian Araujo by unanimous decision. Just one of the best jabs I've ever seen from a female fighter. Just totally won the fight with that. And you know, she got in a couple of troublesome moments, but always seemed to get back to distance and just does not look tough. If you glanced at her in a bar, you probably wouldn't think she could beat most girls her age and weight, but she definitely acts tough and fights tough. That was a pretty decent fight. Edson Barboza over Shane Burgos. That was an interesting one because there was actually this fight going on. At the same time, there was a boxer named Burgos fighting on Showtime. So I was watching Burgos in action in boxing and Burgos in action in MMA at the same time because I was watching the fight on my computer for the UFC and then fight on TV for the boxing. That was crazy. It was a little weird. But Edson Barboza did get the win there. Knockout 1 minute and 16 seconds into the third round. And that was a great scrap until that happened. Both competitive. Andre Muniz getting laughed at by Joe Rogan for saying that he was going to submit Ronaldo Souza, who was formerly known at one point as the Arm Collector. I don't think that's his nickname anymore, but Ronaldo Souza, famous for arm bars. What does he get caught in? An arm bar. And Joe Rogan laughed in his commentary about Muniz threatening to submit Souza. What does he do? Not only submits him, breaks his arm. Broken. Not dislocated. Broken. You can hear the snap. And I've actually had that happen to me. Not my arm, but my ankle. Jumping over a bonfire at a drunken college party in the woods. And it was actually after I graduated college. I'd come back. And I didn't even get off of it after it happened. I was walking on it all night because I was so drunk. And it wasn't until I went to bed where I realized it was broken, but we had it on video. So when I jumped over the bonfire, I had thought that night that I stepped on a board and it cracked, because it was a loud crack. But when we played the video back, I realized that was my ankle. Oh, it was brutal. A lot of pain.
Well, that's one of the ones that I said all them years ago. When I first moved up to this neighborhood, and I used to, go out and jog. We didn't have a trail like we do now, so I would just go jogging down on the one street, and I would go down about a mile and a half, and I would turn around and come home. And it was so there wasn't any schools going on, and it was relatively quiet, and it was warm. It was a warm September morning, like September 3rd, and me and my geniusness, heavy black hoodie, a winter's hat. So it looks like let's be honest. Look, you guys have seen me. I look like a criminal. And I'm about a mile plus from backpedaling, because that's what I do. And I backpedal into, a little divot, and I could hear the ankle snap over the sound of my Walkman.
Ugh.
Shit, this isn't good. And I'm like, I don't have a phone on me. And I'm like, let me try to see if I can jog on it. That lasted about a step. And I'm like, that's not going to work. Then I'm like, I don't know where there's a payphone around here, I'm like, so there's no payphones. And I'm like, I don't have a phone on me. I'm like, do I flag a car down? Well, we didn't have wasn't any traffic on the road that day. It was a holiday. I'm like, should I just go knock on like a random door? And I'm like, you look like a criminal at 8 o'clock in the morning, dressed like a burglar, and you're brand new in this neighborhood. They don't know you. Met with a double-barrel shotgun. So I hobbled a mile plus home on it.
Nice.
Yeah, nope, fun. Well, a couple of days later, they finally took me and go to the hospital. My ankle was, black. And it was swollen badly. It was black. And it was like, you're badly sprained. I had crutches from a previous knee surgery. They said, we recommend you stay on the crutches for about 3 weeks. No training for 6 to 8 weeks. Well, the Eagles lost on that Sunday. I threw the crutches out the door. Decided to start working out on Monday. The only reason I didn't work out on Tuesday was because I was too busy watching the news with 9/11.
Wow. Yeah,
but I ditched the crutches that day, and I started training again almost immediately.
Mine was in like 2000 actually. So I graduated in 99. I went up for the graduation in 2000. My friend was graduating. So he was a junior when I was a senior. So that's what I went up for, and had to have my girlfriend drive me back, who hated driving on the highway, and the whole thing was highway driving, so that was fun. But anyway, yeah, that one wasn't too bad. I then later came up to my dad's place after he bought it, like probably 3 or 4 years later, and broke the other ankle jumping off a tractor. That one took about 3 years to really heal. It was a bad one. But, yeah, they're both fine now. You'd never know what ever happened. I don't have any issues with them. But anyway, getting back to combat sports, we got to talk about boxing. We had a pretty decent scrap on Saturday. Figueroa versus Neri. I watched most of it. I kind of was going back and forth between the fights because the main events were coming up when that was on. But I noticed right away Figueroa started very slow. He had those cut marks on his back from, the alternative treatment there where they put these glass cups on you and it's like a suction deal. So he obviously looked like to me he had some kind of injury he was trying to overcome, because most people don't do that for fun. So I figured I kind of dismissed him very early. It looked like Nery was, going strong, and then what happened? He faded over time, and Figueroa just used his gritty, natural, aggressive youth, and just weathered the storm and took over in the later rounds. And Nery actually got to a point where I think it was a body shot he took, and he just could not continue. And Figueroa won the belts. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know if they'll have a rematch or they'll try to get some other belts. But yeah, that was a good card. Also, over the weekend, we had Steve Claggett losing to Matthew Germain. I don't know why they don't have that Burgos fight on here, the main page, but I'll have to find that. Because that was a decent fight. I watched almost that whole thing. And we got a little bit of boxing to talk about in the heavyweight division. Quite the shakeup. We had an arbitrator rule that a fight has to happen between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder by September 15th, which puts in jeopardy the just announced fight for Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. And I have not really read up on it, but there's some really vicious back and forth going on social media between the two fighters, Joshua and Fury now. Go ahead, Tony.
I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of annoyed,
most fans are.
Well, that was my beeper, sorry. That was my thing. It was just alerting me. Now, here's why I'm annoyed. I understand, to Wilder, wants his third fight. And he's made up every excuse in the book on why he did not win the second fight, which, and honestly, he didn't win the first fight either, and he was lucky to escape with a draw. If you go back, they fought a total of 19 rounds, 12 in the first fight, 7 in the second fight. Tyson Fury won a total of 18 and a half of those rounds, and the only time he lost was when he was on the canvas, twice in the first fight. A flash knockdown, and then a legitimate, pretty much looked like fight over knockdown. And he got up from both of them, and, he dominated the rest of the fight. Second fight, he took it to Wilder. Wilder can say, my costume was too heavy. My drink was spiked. I don't care. I don't want to hear it. You got your ass kicked from pillar to post. Every second of that fight, he got his ass. Now, it's like, okay, he might say, I want this fight, I want my redemption, I want this, I want that. What he really wants is a payday. In his mind, okay, he can take a step back, take a fight against another good contender out there. Guys like, you have your Dillian White, a few of the up-and-coming fighters. You still got Andy Ruiz, who just came off a big win. You still got all these, for, Wilder. But the thing is, if he loses any of them, his money's gone. So he wants to make the money now.
Won't take step-aside money, apparently.
He doesn't want to step-aside money. He wants to make that big payday off of Fury. He knows if he takes a fight with, say, Andy Ruiz, and he gets beat, or if he fights Dillian White and he gets beat, especially if he gets knocked out, his cash cow is gone. Oh, he's going to, at 30-plus years old, he's going to have a hard time rebuilding and getting A-side money again. Right. Now, here is the downside. We all know fighters will get a guaranteed purse and all that, but they'll also sometimes get of the gate, percentages of the pay-per-view sales. The second Fury-Wilder fight drew big numbers because of the controversial nature of the first fight. The fact that Fury was winning, and then that devastating knockdown at the end that he got somehow. So people were like, hey, I even had friends of mine that don't watch, were calling me saying, hey, Tone, you want to watch this fight together? And I'm like, yeah, let's have a party. So right now, casual fans are going to be like, why am I going to spend money on this again? Why am I going to drop $100 to watch this fight again? It was not, competitive. I'm not going to spend, money on that. So if there's any money for the gate or any money for the pay-per-view sales, Wilder is not going to cash in as much as he thinks he is.
You forgot an excuse. What about the gloves? The gloves they didn't have any padding in the wrist.
Oh yeah, of course. How can I forget that he was, punching, something with the gloves, and he was, maneuvering them. And I've had people actually, and I've had pro fighters try to say, yeah, look at the way they are. That's he was obviously tampering with them. He was obviously tampering. Well, if anybody knows anything about boxing, and if you're a professional fighter and you're saying that you ought to be embarrassed for yourself, because for a fight of that magnitude, and you guys know the same thing, if Rich and I are going to fight right now for the heavyweight championship of the world, and we're getting our hands taped, one of Rich's handlers is in my dressing room, one of my handlers is in his, and they're watching. And then when the gloves come on, they inspect the gloves going on. They inspect the gloves beforehand. They inspect the gloves going on. I don't know how in the hell he would have been able to tamper that. We've all worn gloves. I mean, it's like when you're in there and they're, laced and taped, that's pretty hard because, they're form-fitting.
Yeah. Crazy shit. Anyway, yeah, so that fight is in jeopardy. The Fury and Joshua have been just destroying each other on social media. I believe one of the headlines I read was that Fury had offered Joshua $41 million for a bare-knuckle fight off the books.
I heard.
So, I don't know what the deal with that is, but another heavyweight fight over the weekend generating some controversy that actually happened Manuel Char versus Christopher Lovejoy, and this has a Don King connection because I didn't even publish the press release that I sent you guys, but it's kind of pathetic to me that
yeah, I was reading it.
This guy had a big opportunity to fight for a belt. He's undefeated. His whole record is in Mexico. There's no real evidence of it, and they set him up for this big fight under Don King. And Don King doesn't want him to take it. He forbids him to take it, so the only way he can take it is to declare bankruptcy, to get out of his contract with Don King. And Don King still is putting out press releases saying, don't fight this guy, you will be in violation of your contract. I mean, how bad do you have to be as a manager where a guy will bankrupt himself to get out of a deal? He is slipping. I don't know whether it's dementia or that he's just using his name and just back to his old tricks. But this guy is just, everything that he sends for press release to me, this guy sends, it's like, a dispute with a fighter now. He's, telling some other fighter not to fight somewhere. It's like the opposite of what a manager needs to be. He was a great promoter once, he was good at it, but yes, just sad to see. It's like a fighter that hangs on too long, Get the hell out.
You're right. He was the premier guy for a long time, but, he's pushing 90 now. He hasn't had really a significant fighter in how many years?
Germain Stavern.
World champion.
Germain. That was the last guy.
Germain Stavern. I didn't know that. I remember he had that one boy that was a light heavyweight, and Bernard Hopkins was going to fight him, and Bernard Hopkins was like, Don King, I'm taking away your last champion. Then he did. And Tavares Cloud. That's what it was.
Yeah. Well, this time it was a guy named Lovejoy, and he got put down, I think, in the second round against Char. And Char was coming off a long layoff, too, but he's now trying to call for a freaking fight with Anthony Joshua. It's a little premature there, buddy. After beating this guy who has got
everybody, they're trying to get their chances. A few dollar signs.
Right. We also had another story about Manny Pacquiao and Mikey Garcia are apparently trying to set up a boxing match, but it's not locked in yet. Mikey's in it, in it to win it. He wants it, but Pacquiao's interest has been minimal. But Garcia believes it's more the advisors around. You can see
why it's kind of a no-win thing for Manny.
Yeah,
for sure.
So basically, he's saying that the advisors around Manny, every time that he talks to somebody, it's like there's more people that he has to go through. He said, we've been close to getting something, but we just haven't been able to lock it in. We feel we're almost there, and then it just doesn't quite get there. The pandemic has been part of it. Initially, we thought it would be sometime in May. That was a few months back, like January, February. Now May is out. June is out because we're not there yet. We need time to promote, to work, and train. We've all had these ideas and conversations and just haven't been able to lock it in. So, we'll see, but that would be a great fight. Anyway. Let's see what else we got. Mahmoud Char, that's who was knocked out. Christopher Lovejoy. That's what we were just talking about, Don King, the guy. Knocked him right out. Here's a little crossover story. Dana White has refused to allow George St. Pierre to fight Oscar De La Hoya in a boxing match. And again, this is a Triller thing, this crossover deal. This is why Oscar De La Hoya did some commentary for them, so he must have collected a paycheck or something, or he must be involved somehow at some level where they're offering him instant opportunities like this to fight on their network. Obviously, he's a big name. They'll draw in some big crowds. But the other part of it, I think, is that Oscar has watched what Floyd has done, coming out of retirement only to fight people that he knows he can beat, and especially, people coming from mixed martial arts, like, the guy over in Japan. Jeez, he was a kickboxer and got knocked out.
Oh my God, that was terrible.
30 seconds.
That was terrible. That was bad.
Even though it was an exhibition, before that it was McGregor, so he waits for these opportunities, and I'm thinking George St. Pierre wouldn't have been that easy to beat, even for Oscar De La Hoya. And he would have cherished the opportunity to try to represent combat sports in a little better light than guys like Ben Askren have. And Conor McGregor even, but he fought the best in the world. The best in the world. I mean, Oscar De La Hoya was the best in the world, but he's very old now. And he's not proven in his comeback. He hasn't really fought anybody. So this would have been a great fight to make.
He hasn't fought in 13 years.
Yeah, this would have been fabulous.
He hasn't fought in almost 13 years, and he hasn't had a win. And the last win he had was over Steve Forbes 13 years ago, and it wasn't, a dominant win. So you figure he's only fought 3 times in the last 4 years. One of them was a close loss to Mayweather. One of them was an uninspiring loss, or uninspiring win over Steve Forbes. And one was an absolute destruction at the hands of Manny Pacquiao. And then,
and you wonder about his lifestyle, too. You wonder about his lifestyle.
Abuse issues.
Yeah, the the commentary he gave was highly criticized by millions of people across Twitter and all the social platforms while that broadcast was going on, leading a lot of people to say he's probably back on his drug regimen. And he was notorious for doing a lot of cocaine, to the point where I think he got sued by a stripper who said that she had been locked up in his room while he was wearing women's negligee. That's ridiculous stuff. So, yeah, he's probably not all there right now. But anyway, even a half-assed effort from him against a guy that's been out of fighting as well for over 4 years would have been a good fight to make on paper. Whether it would really materialize as a great fight in the ring would be a different story, but it would have drawn a lot of eyes to Triller, and it would have made money. But I guess Dana White wanted to make more money off whatever George does next. Maybe he's still trying to convince him to come back to the octagon. I don't know, but I found it interesting that I just read an article the other day that Dan Hardy was able to get a release from his contract, who is much less famous, but has had more intense battles with the promotion. And it all stems from the fight he had with Herb Dean over a stoppage that he thought should have been called earlier. And then it wasn't just Herb Dean, it was somebody else in the UK office of marketing that he got really upset with, that he had complained about, and then found out the complaint just got back to that person and nothing was done about it. So it's a big article about Dan Hardy asking for his release, and then the UFC gave it to him. Maybe because he was only going to go do commentary after that, but it sounds like he wants to fight again in some promotion. So I really thought that was interesting, that they won't give George St. Pierre his release, but they'll give Dan Hardy his release. Interesting double standard there. And another guy doing crossover, Chuck Liddell. He's not going to box anybody, don't worry. He's going to be a referee of the Lamar Odom versus Aaron Carter boxing match. That's obviously going to be another.
And that was being promoted by our good friend Damon Feldman.
Yeah, in Atlantic City, New Jersey.
Yep.
June 11th. So that's an interesting one. Chuck Liddell. We'll see if he can referee a fight.
I'll tell you something about, working as a referee. Have you guys ever done that even for sparring sessions?
Oh, I used to do it for my Friday night fights on campus. For the majority of the fights.
Okay.
Except the one I was in.
Yeah. People,
it's tough.
People don't realize how challenging it can be sometimes.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, yeah.
Especially when you've trained both fighters who are fighting each other. Like, you want to give advice to them, but you can't.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. And then the other part is, like, if you have that, you know, is not very skilled or is a little bit reckless in there, and you're trying to keep it a sparring session, when we were at Lock Haven, we would have the guys from, you know, a town not that far would come and train. And one of the guys that was helping run the program was Steve Witherspoon, who's the brother of former heavyweight champion Terrible Tim Witherspoon. Steve is still a friend of mine. He would bring these kids there, and some of these kids were from broken homes, and, you know, they were, maybe some of them were at Williamsport because they had got sent there on rehabilitation or something like that. So a lot of times you would get some of these kids in here, and they were kind of, you know, rough, tough, you know, very, they weren't polished. They weren't polished boxers, for sure, and they were street kids. And so when you get kids like that in a gym in like a Philadelphia, it was, I think, easier to rein them in, because I've been in both environments. In the boxing gym in Philadelphia, you know, you had top-notch fighters in there. So if someone was really acting up or acting out of control, yo, Tone, get in the ring with this guy, you know, humble him a little bit, beat him up. Where they really couldn't do that in Williamsport because all the guys were like that, you know. So I had one kid that used to come there, big husky white kid, you know, tall, lanky, you know, he kind of looked like a grown-up beauty, you know, and Tom, it's the best way I can describe him, you know, long reddish hair, you know, you could tell just from talking to him that he was, you know, a real rough around the edges kid, a street kid, kind of nasty. So one of his first questions, when the kid from Lock Haven was, you know, coming towards him, he had him backing up. This kid was like, nobody's ever punched back at him before. He didn't know what to do. And then finally, like, he was almost like a bully that was getting bullied. But he threw a haymaker of a right hand. They caught the Lock Haven kid on the chin and knocked him stone out cold. I mean, he dropped him, like, boom. So, you know, so this kid's not skilled, but he's rough, he's mean, and he can hit. So the following week, they put me in with him. And I remember Dr. Cox saying, and listen, be careful. You know, this kid can punch. I said, Doc, I got it. You know, I know what he's got. But I could also see that he would wilt under pressure. So I would, you know, go into him, I'd drop down, get to the body, hit him with a couple shots, I'd see him cock that right hand back, and I would just step away, and I'd make a miss, I'd wave at him, I'd blow a kiss, you know, I was fucking with him. And he was getting mad, and he was, like, challenging me to come on. I said, okay, here I come. And I would come in, I'd start roughing him up again, I'd wait for that right hand to cock, and I'd step away. So then they had me referee him. Oh my God, it was easier fighting him than refereeing, because he was with another kid, you know, that was similar skill level, which was none, and they looked like two silverback gorillas just trying to maul each other, and they're clinching and they're fighting and they're roughing each other up, and I'm trying to sit there, break. They're not breaking. Break. They're not breaking. I'm getting in there and I'm trying to, tear them apart. I said, break. I'm pushing them both back. Okay, fight. Again, two, you know, sheep gliding heads, you know, like just two big imbeciles. And they're swinging and it's sloppy and ugly and you know, oh, it was a mess. And I'm like, break. Finally, I got in there and I pushed them both. And I said,
that's what you learn from the best refs. You have to stick your hands right in between them and yell break at the same time. It's like, you know, they're so focused on beating each other up. A lot of people phase out. They phase out that audio, and they just go into the physical guy before me. You don't even hear it.
Listen to me. I said, I'm the fucking referee here. When I give you an order, you better fucking listen. And then the one kid was there that said, listen. And I looked at him, I said, I whipped your ass before. Go, please don't do it again.
Nice. But yeah, I remember when we asked Steve Schmoger if he ever been hit in a fight in the face. He's like, "Oh yeah, it took one right in the jaw."
I gotta look. I'll look on YouTube to see if I can copy this fight, and if I can find it, I'll send you guys the link. There was a fight at the old Blue Horizon in Philadelphia, and it was one of those nights. I don't know why. I was 13 years old. I put a VHS tape in, and I said, "I'm going to tape this fight." I don't know why I did, and I was, you know, I don't think I even have that. I'm sure I don't have that tape anymore. VHS, right? But it was the Blue Horizon, and it was a guy named Vincent Petway, who's known for knocking out Simon Brown a couple years later when Brown was shadowboxing on the canvas. Mm-hmm. Petway lost this fight. He was fighting a guy named Victor Davis, and it was 1990 fights of the year. I mean, these two guys went at it. A classic Blue Horizon fight. I mean, they really tore into each other. I think it got stopped on Petway's. He had a cut. I think they stopped it on a cut. But the best part about it was the referee was Frank Cappuccino, the referee of the first Gotti Ward fight. And Cappuccino got dropped at the end, I think, like the 7th or 8th round. They had to bring another referee in for the next round.
Ouch. That's a tough day at the office. I've seen the ones where in the MMA where the guy still thinks he's fighting and takes down the ref. And sometimes they try to put, like, leg locks on him and stuff. And one time I saw the ref, like, had to get help to get the kid's leg lock off of him. But I don't think he got seriously injured, but it was just funny. Anyway, we were talking about the Figueroa card, and I didn't mention the undercard fights that were pretty decent. When I was watching the Burgos fight, Juan Carlos Burgos, 34-4-2, ended up losing a real war of attrition there with Xavier Martinez, who stayed undefeated at 16-0. And just had the better style there, but Burgos kept hanging in there. He was definitely a tough dance partner. And then we had Daniel Roman in the co-main event, looking champion-like again, against Ricardo Espinoza Franco, who just had nothing. Just had no answer. Just could not compete there with the speed and power of Roman. And just the grittiness. I mean, he was just rock'em sock'em robots. This was a really good fight to watch. And Roman's right back in the super bantamweight picture there. And he probably would love a crack at Figueroa. But we'll see what happens there. This upcoming weekend, it's not very huge, but I know we got a very huge mismatch of the week from Japan right off the bat. Got to mention this one. The main event too, I believe. There's only two fights on the card, I believe. But yeah, there's some crazy ones this week. The guy who's 42-56. Yikes. Guy in Italy named Luigi. Believe that? No, it's like
I'm shocked.
So the rest of it is coming. I've got to get to his record here. It's funny. Okay, here is. I just saw the guy's name that I just mentioned earlier. Okay, this is in Denmark. We got Frank Madsen. He's 5-1 at super weatherweight. He's fighting Kaka. That's his name, Kaka Avatiziani. And he's
I was going to say Kaka.
42-56-1. This guy's record. Kaka. K-A-K-H-A. Kaka. If you say it a different way. That's funny. Now, we got to get to Luigi. Okay, Luigi is fighting Simone Trello. 1-0-1 Simone is at middleweight. Luigi Mantegna. He is 2-84-2. It's not really a mismatch, but boy, that is an opponent's record if I ever saw one. Working up towards 100 losses. Now, here's the Japanese one. Okay, this is the mismatch of the week. Tomoki Kameda at featherweight. His record is 36-1. wins, 3 losses. Has won 5 out of his last 6. His fearsome opponent is Hironori Miyake, who is 9-10-2. 4 of his last 6 were losses. 1 was a draw. And then we have, let's see. Get some fights in South Africa. Not really a mismatch, but boy, what a discrepancy in records here. Main event is Hecky Butler, light flyweight, 32-4, fighting Jonathan Almason, who's only 7-3-2, and it's for a title. Vacant WBC silver light flyweight title. Crazy one. I still can't believe we got skunked on a Jesus fight last week. Not a single Jesus fighting on Saturday. We go to the United Kingdom here on Saturday. Sam Eggington, 29-7, fighting Carlos Molina, who's 37-11-2. That one's for a title, the WBC silver middleweight title. A lot of silver titles on the line this weekend. Co-main event there, welterweights KC Benjamin, 11-1-1. Ones are wild. Against Martin Harkin, who's 13-1. And then here's a crazy name for a fighter. Somebody's always got to go in this one. River Wilson Bent, 8-0, fighting George Farrell, who's 5-0, for the BBFC Midlands area middleweight title. And I maybe spoke too soon with the mismatch of the week because we have Idris Virgo on this card. He's 9-0-1, fighting Louis Van Poach. 9-124-2 is his record. 124 losses. You got to feel bad if you're one of them 9 people he beat. Rough one. Rough record. Unless you're fighting him. And then the big one, I guess, is ESPN Plus card from Las Vegas, the Virgin Hotels. I've never heard of those, but Las Vegas just recently opened up all their casinos 100%. So I think there's going to be a lot more fights there. And this card actually has our former guest and Tony's buddy, and sort of my buddy. I only met him a couple of times, but we were always friendly. Henry Lundy, Hank. He is 31-8-1.
Yeah.
Fighting Jose Zepeda, 33-2 for the WBC. Again, silver, super lightweight title. A lot of silvers on the line this week. He's one of them. So we're going to be rooting for him for sure. Jose's no cheap date, but he's had a loss and no contest in his last 6. Hank's had two right in the middle of his last 6, but we got all the faith in him. The main event is that somebody's always got to go. It's not a Jesus fight of the week, but it's a Jose fight of the week, I guess. Jose Carlos Ramirez, 26-0, fighting Josh Taylor, who's 17-0 for the WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO World Super Lightweight titles. So that's going to be a good free fight on ESPN. Or is it ESPN Plus? I don't know. I don't know if it's restricted to just ESPN Plus. I guess it says both of them here. Let's see. We got our Elvis fight of the week on this one. Elvis Rodriguez, 11-0-1, fighting Kenneth Sims Jr., who's 15-2-1. This guy doesn't have a good name for a fighter. Josh Hammock. 9-9 is his record. Goes to the hammock.
Does he need a hammock when he's done?
And then we're going to have to do a page search again to see if there's a Jesus fight this week. Oh, yes, there is. 1 of 1. It's the main event in Phoenix, Arizona on Saturday middleweights. Duchesne Crooks, 14-2, fighting. You're never going to believe this. A Hispanic guy with 4 names, and one of them's Jesus. Jesus, Adrian, Haro, Campus. 7, 9, and 4. So, as is tradition, Jesus may need a miracle this week. He's the only Jesus fighting. This is a serious Jesus drought. We need to reach out to the Jesuses in Mexico and tell them to start fighting again. So then we got all MMA left. All MMA. We'll see if we can mix some boxing in somehow, Tony, for you. There's a big story we got to talk about before we talk about the events. Mostly last week's stuff. Diego Sanchez. This is one I haven't talked about in a few weeks, but I've been wanting to mention on the show. He's got a little bit of controversy going on with his coach, and it's one of the reasons why he was basically released from the UFC before he was able to get his last fight in. And it's all about this coach, Joshua Fadia, who has a lot of questionable background and tactics, too. Apparently, he called the UFC and wanted his complete medical records, Diego's complete medical records. And he got a power of attorney and everything to do all this, signed by Sanchez. And not only that, but his training techniques were just ridiculous. He had Diego Sanchez hang from a pole by his legs, and he was kicking him in the head and chest and stomach and everything, and the hips, and punching him while Diego was having to block. So he basically made him a human punching bag. This was part of his training. Ridiculous. I've never seen anything like that. Why would you have to defend yourself hanging upside down? Ever. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Don't question the master.
But he got involved with this guy in the lead up to the fight with Mickey Gall. And then things just started to go crazy. But anyway, so they parted ways recently. I don't know whether it's because Diego is trying to make peace with the UFC or what, but when the feud was going on over all this stuff, Diego came out with some very aggressive and unproven allegations, but not surprising based on what I know from my research into the UFC through science. Back in the days, there was the same shit was happening. But among the claims that he's made is that in a couple of years we might see Diego disappear. Or he might die mysteriously in a car crash, or a myriad of different ways that he could just be erased. And he started talking a little bit about the UFC and the mafia and all that. But he also made some allegations about Dana White sleeping with ring card girls. And I can remember from the Science thing, there was a rumor that he slept with the girl that was in the Science commercial. And it wouldn't be that far out of the realm of possibility, because there was an actual court case where a guy that was extorting Dana White over getting him to sleep with his girlfriend and taping it. This guy taped the encounter, so he was then trying to extort him with the tape, and he got arrested. But in the process, Dana White had to let it out that he was in a sex tape that this guy produced, basically, to extort him. So yeah, Dana White's obviously not being faithful in his marriage. But it was basically a threat that he was going to come out and reveal all this. So now this happens. I wonder if Dana White, not wanting any bad publicity to increase, came to Diego and said, "Listen, this has gotten too far. We don't want you to do all that shit. Just get rid of your coach and show us that you're serious. Don't fucking mouth off anymore, and we'll bring you back." Because that's the kind of information that he obviously went to great lengths to punish a guy for threatening him with before. I would not be surprised if this time he decided to treat it with a little more kid gloves and promise Diego a shot at coming back if he get rid of this guy. But there's not really much on why. He said he's going to be coming out with a statement soon, but this story just popped on SureDog today. That's where I saw it. But yeah. ridiculous. One of the other training methods this guy used was chasing his fighters around with a knife in the cage. I don't see how that's going to prepare you for an MMA fight. Anyway. So, we have a UFC card coming up this weekend. We got a Bellator card tomorrow. And, yeah, that's it. 2 big events in MMA. No one championship. No PFL until June. So we got 2 nights, Friday and Saturday. Las Vegas on Saturday, UFC Fight Night 188. We got Rob Font versus Cody Garbrandt. And both of these guys are pretty interesting characters. They're tough fighters. Obviously, Rob has a little bit more experience. Cody's maybe fought a few more top fighters. But this one's going to be interesting. I really don't know too much about Font. I've seen Garbrandt at his best and worst. But, you know, he's had the tough losses that make you question whether he can really get back into that top level without changing something seriously. But Rob's a tough guy, too. I don't know, if I really had to pick a gun to my head, I'd say Cody. Cody's he's got the explosiveness to win by knockout. I'd have to really look into it deeper, but gut instinct tells me Cody wins this. But Rob Font would not surprise me too much if he does. Co-main event, Carla Esparza. She was a fierce competitor when she started after the Ultimate Fighter, but she's kind of been a bit mediocre since. This is a tough matchup for her. She's 17-6 going in against a 13-1 Xiaonan Yan. And it seems like a lot of the UFC fights on the main card with Japanese fighters, Asian fighters, period, they don't do so well for some reason or other. I mean, unless the card's in China or, you know, an Asian country, like they've done a couple times. It's just like, it's tough. And, you know, it has nothing to do with any anti-Asian sentiment or anything like that. It's just one of those odd phenomenon in the UFC. But some of the female fighters have done a little bit better, aside from Rose Namajunas' last opponent there. Xiaonan Yan has done pretty well, 13-1. That's a heck of a record. Then we have Justin Tafa, 4-2, fighting Jared Vandera, who's 11-5. They look like heavyweights from their pictures here. Felicia Spencer, 8-2, fighting Norma Dumont, 5-1. David Dvorak, 19-3, fighting Leon Paiva, who is 20-3. Jack Hermanson, 21-6, fighting Edmund Shabazian, who is 11-1. Interesting one. A lot of experience for Hermanson. But the better record for Shabazian, so we'll see what goes on there. Bill Aljeo, 14-5, fighting Ricardo Ramos. In the middle of the card, 7th fight. And Ramos is 14-3. Aljeo is 14-5. Ben Rothwell, big heavyweight, 38-13. Has been in multiple organizations, been around a while. He's in the big show now, fighting Chris Barnett, 21-6. So a lot of experience there too. I don't know much about Barnett. I don't believe I've ever seen him fight. But I believe this week, before I make my picks on FanDuel, I'm going to watch a little video, because last time I did, didn't do a pick last week, but last time I picked a card, I did horrible on both cards. So this time, for the fighters I don't know, I'm definitely going to try to find some video. So we'll have to see if there's any out there on Chris. Claudio Silva, the 5th fight of the night. He's 14-2, fighting Court McGee, who's 19-10. And Bruno Silva in the 4th fight of the night, 11-5-2, fighting Victor Rodriguez, who's 5-3. Joshua Koulibayo in the 3rd fight, 8-1-1, fighting Elan Shah, who's 19-6. Yancy Medeiros fighting in the 2nd fight of the night, 15-7, fighting Damir Hadzovic, who is 13-6. And And it's back-to-back Demirs. The first fight of the night is Demir Ismagulov, who is 22-1, fighting Rafael Alves, 19-9. I believe that's the mismatch of this card. But sometimes you can't go by that in the statistics, you know. He might be the most expensive fighter because of that, though, this week. But sometimes you don't want to pull the trigger on that because this guy Alves might have, you know, a record where he fought the best. Or it could just be that good with one submission, you know, and you pull off a miracle. That's what's been happening in the last couple of fights. So sometimes you gotta hedge your bets. Pick both people on different cards. Anyway, Bellator. Christine Cyborg back in action, fighting Leslie Smith, who is not anybody that puts fear into your heart if you've seen her fight. 12-8-1 is her record. I mean, Bellator is running out of good people to put in front of Christiane Justino here. 23-2 is her record. So this has got to be the female mismatch of the week. Maybe mismatch of the month, unless Leslie is on some serious steroids that I don't know about. But, yeah, I don't expect Cyborg to have any difficulty here. And that's no knock to Leslie Smith. It's just, Cyborg is just that good. And I don't think, you know, all the steroids that she's proven to have done, Justino, you know, had nothing to do with how great she is. Obviously helped her physically. But hopefully she's not on that crap anymore. Fighting clean. But anyway, Darren Caldwell in the co-main event, who is 15-4, fighting Leandro Higo, who is 20-5. By the way, we might be able to get Darren on the show coming up after this fight at some point, because I have a connection that just connected with me due to the investigative reporting stuff that I've done. I put out a thing on Quora.com. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that site, but I guess there's a lot of people on there. And, you know, there's just not a lot of people that do investigative reporting as a career out there. So apparently that thread that I put out there on how telling people how to find a good investigative reporter and, you know, what it's all about has gotten so popular that people search for investigative reporter and how to find one for their cases, you know, they want to expose, and they find my thread. So this guy is involved in like a big scandal involved with wrestling, and I guess, you know, in his wrestling background in high school, he coached Darren Caldwell, so if I help him out, his chances we'll get that interview locked up. But anyway, he's got a tough date this weekend. Leandro Higo, 20-5. Darren's 15-4. And we'll see how he does. Make a great interview either way. We have Austin Vanderford, undefeated at 10-0, fighting Fabian Edwards. Jaleel Willis, 14-2 in the 10th fight of the night, fighting Macon Mendonca, who is 11-4. And a female fight, Valerie Loreda, 3-0, fighting Hannah Guy. She's a girl, but her name is Guy. It's a tough one. It's 2-1 for Hannah Guy. Syed Awad, 23-13, big-time veteran of the sport, long-time Bellator fighter. He's got one draw as well. Fighting Nate Andrews, 16-3. Then we got 5-0's got to go. Tyree Fortune and Grant Neal, both of them 5-0 going into this one. And another female fight, Sumiko Inaba, 1-0, fighting Christina Katsikis, who is 1-1. And we're not going to go through all the preliminaries, but the first one is worth mentioning. Brett Johns, 17-2, fighting Danny Sabatello, who is 10-1. It's a pretty good record for the untelevised first fight of the night. Anyway, last piece we have to mention, actually, two more pieces to mention, two more news stories, and then we'll call it a show. We talked about this a little while ago, this galactic thing Fighting in space. Weightlessness. No, this is serious, I guess, because this has gotten to sports.yahoo.com. It's calling it the Star Wars MMA pioneer here. This story. Just waiting for it to load up. Yahoo's being slow tonight. Star Wars MMA promoter, pioneer John Lewis promises zero-gravity madness with galactic combat. It's not a questionable plot for a sci-fi flick. But this galactic combat is a very real concept. There's officials behind it. They call the company Space 11. Describe their organization as a company specifically dedicated to servicing film and TV projects in outer space. And their intention is to produce a reality competition series that will follow fighters through a 12-month competition for the opportunity to be the first combatants to fight beyond Earth's atmosphere. So, if you're looking for an opportunity to be champion of space, this is it. You might never be champion of the world, but you could definitely be champion of space. That's a great idea. They could really pull it off. It's going to cost a shitload of money, no matter how it's gotten done. But Lewis has been involved in television and film production. And he said bringing his two careers together in one concept became a very intriguing possibility following a meeting with Space 11 founder Andre Lervolino. He said, I was already working in the space sector with some other films that I'm doing through Wonder Film Media and also at the same time my history. When we first met, he didn't even know that part of my MMA history. And actually, he's known for a history that dates back to the early days of this sport, this guy Lewis. He's a black belt, and he debuted in the UFC in 1999, which is the year I graduated college, after already boasting clashes with the likes of Rumina, Sato, Kenny Monday, and Carlson Gracie Jr. He also opened the legendary Academy J Sect in Las Vegas, where he introduced UFC President Dana White, along with former owners Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts. So there you have it. So yeah, he's a fighter himself, promoter, and a TV guy, movie guy. So all he needs to complete this thing is to have the space guy. It sounds like he's got the space guy, so this thing is happening. Sign me up. I want to fight at zero gravity. If I could do that, I mean, that would be like amazing, because I have the Air Force Academy experience, you know. I could have been a pilot. Now I get to just fly out into outer space and back again and fight up there. I don't know how they're going to actually do the fighting in space part, but it sounds like that's at the end. So they must do like all the training, the fight training and the space training before. As part of the reality show, and then send two people up to be the first people to fight in space. So you probably don't actually get to go up there, or even into weightlessness, unless they have a chamber or something that they use. I don't know what the technology is, but either way, you know, being on the show and even not getting the opportunity to go up in space to do the fight would be cool. But I don't know how popular it's going to be. I mean, this is going to be a hard project to even get off the ground, never mind promote. Who knows? We'll see. Now, final story of the night. I don't think you guys are going to like this one. I really don't, but we're gonna tell you anyway.
We're not going to like it. That's not good.
Jake Paul agrees to deal with Showtime Sports to broadcast his next boxing match. So the YouTuber has been mainstreamed. What do you guys think? Don't kill the messenger.
I mean, you know what bothers me about it? It's like, you know, guys that have fought so hard to climb up the ranks that have, you know, I mean, hey, give the guy his due. I mean, he's out there and he's, you know, doing what he's doing, and he's, you know, got it from basically, he'd be starting off as a trash-talking YouTuber that could throw hands a little bit. And he's, really making a brand for himself. And that's great. You can't knock a person for that. But in a way, people that would pay to watch him fight, I'm going to watch Jake Paul fight, whether he's going to fight with Floyd Mayweather or whether he's going to fight that clown he knocked out, a few months ago. We're going to pay to watch him fight, and we're going to not pay to watch, just a really good ESPN card or a pay-per-view card. We're going to take Jake Paul over Canelo Alvarez in the mainstream right now. That's not good, because Canelo, I was watching one of his fights today from when he was 16. It's like a guy that's busted his ass for the last, 18 or so years, and 15 years as a professional now. That's a pill to swallow.
Yeah. Yeah, it just came up in the alert, so it must have just happened. I don't know whether that puts him on the path to fight actual boxers or not, but he's 3-0, 3 knockouts, 24 years old. He's actually a native of Cleveland. Did you know that, Tom?
Yes.
I apologize.
Yes, indeed.
On behalf of Cleveland. For Jake Paul.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that's a big opportunity for a young guy like that who has no experience really fighting actual boxers to be added to the Showtime stable. So I think a lot of people are just rooting for him to get that wake-up call that, hey, this is not a game. This is not a viral video opportunity. This is real life. And when you fight, when you talk trash like that, somebody's bound to come along and take it personally and show you exactly why you're so wrong. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But I, on the other hand, realize that he's going to do what he does, and he's going to dodge the tough fights as long as possible. But I don't think there's any way he's going to be able to, under the Showtime banner, be able to refuse to fight actual boxers now. I think that's going to be difficult as, he pads his record.
Right.
Because they're not going to want to be associated with that. They put on pretty professional events, with big, real-named fighters. So, I hope that's the good effect that it has on Jake Paul. That it forces him to actually compete with somebody that could knock him out. On a good or a bad day, So, that's where we're going to end it for the night. And we'll...
I just want to just kind of end it on a somber note a little bit. I just sent you guys a link to an article. One of my old teammates at Lock Haven, he was the silver medalist at the 1998 National 112 pounds. Mike Kahn passed away over the weekend. Apparently, it was a motorcycle accident, and it was crazy because came up to Lock Haven. He came up for the wrestling team. In fact, the article I sent you was about his high school wrestling career. But Lock Haven has a rich wrestling background and such a deep, roster. He was having a hard time cracking it as a freshman. He stepped away and took up boxing for a year. And one of the most unorthodox guys that I've ever trained with, because, you would try to teach him all the right fundamentals. He didn't want to listen. He was going to do it his way. He was going to go from orthodox to southpaw and mid-punch. He was, hard to train. You try to work him on the pads. You couldn't call a combination for him because, he wouldn't follow it anyway. But Dr. Cox always would scour for heavyweights and 112-pounders. Because he figured, when you're trying to get a team out to the Nationals, because a lot of regions might only have 1 or 2 guys at that weight class, you had a quicker way to get into the Nationals and pick up a few extra points for a team total, get into a national title. So, when Dr. Cox heard that he wasn't going to make the wrestling team, he, said, hey, come on over to us for a little bit, we'll get you some competition for this year in boxing. And every fight he had was a split decision, whether he won or he lost. He won a couple split decisions to get into the Nationals, won a split decision in the National semifinals, and then he lost to my good friend from Kentucky, Sal Bertuna. I just messaged Sal to tell him, in the National finals. The night we had the dinner at the university president's house, he'd always have a banquet for the boxing team. We'd all go there in shirts and ties, suit jackets and all that. Mike Kahn was late. Shows up in basically, a t-shirt and ripped jeans. Mm-hmm. But that was the way he was. He was a father at a young age, so we had him at, the one fight. He's still in his trunks and all that, and he's changing a diaper. The following year, where I graduated, I had class with him, and Rich, I'll send you a picture from my one scrapbook of him changing a diaper with his gear on. We had a class together the following year, and I was getting ready to graduate, and he was like, "Listen, bro," he's like, "this is an English class, or do any of this stuff. Will you write my papers for me? I'll pay you $10 a paper. Done." And the thing is, I wrote his papers and my paper grades, and I did. But
paid,
I think I haven't talked.
Do a little bit better work. That's a social experiment right there.
May he rest in peace. Yeah, really. Well, I'll tell you, who else said something like that? It was Mick Foley, Mankind, the professional wrestler. Obviously you could tell he became a very good writer because he wrote 3 or 4 autobiographies, and then he was writing novels.
For the New York Times bestseller list too, one of them.
Yeah, talented writer. And he said in one of his times, it was like he was in a class one time, and it was a creative writing class, and he loved it. He took money to write papers for 3 other students, 3 A's and a C+. He goes, and
they're
guess
businesses
who got the C+.
now. I got recruited. I didn't want to go through all the training, on all the standards and citations and all that bullshit. I'm not really up on that. So I didn't like to do AP writing either when I was in the newspaper. But, so there was an actual website, though, that recruited me to be a writer to write school papers. It's an actual business now. They have websites. So that's funny that you mentioned that. A sad story. Rest in peace, Mike Kahn. Since you tried to end it on a sad note, I'm going to try to end it on a positive note about my school. Because, number one, I'm in that little meme group I was telling you guys a little bit about months ago. But our big target has been the commandant of the school, the 55th commandant of Norwich University, this guy Titus. And there's been so many memes, making fun of this dude. And I suggested when the president got named after our president for 20-something years, the one that was at school when I was there, just retired last year. And this new guy comes in, and he happens to be from Air Force Academy. And he wasn't president there or anything. He was just a part of the development program, I guess. He was head of that, instruction program. And so he ended up coming over to Norwich, and he fired Titus last week. After we've all been, multiple people have been calling for this guy to be fired. He's getting rid of all these traditions that Norwich has, and he's he's screwed up a lot of kids' lives over petty shit, breaking the rules and stuff. And this guy is a president who's very loose about alcohol. Norwich has been a dry campus forever. And where we used to do our boxing training was called the 21 Club, because it used to be the last place where cadets were allowed to drink legally on campus. But they had closed it down. So it still had a little bar set up in the kitchen area and everything. So it was a cool place. It was almost like your own little house. But anyway, long story short, he fired Titus, and then one of the kids in the meme group got to talking to him about his plans for the school. And he wants Norwich University to be the first school to pioneer an MMA combative sports program with other schools. So MMA as a college sport. And I'm sure if I pitched some ideas to him, he'd be interested in getting boxing back too, because they still do it at Air Force Academy, and I know He also went through ROTC at Rutgers and everything, and has probably served with a lot of guys from all the military academies in actual active duty. So he's been around. He's a guy that went from Army or Air Force to Army or something like that. He's had some dual branch service as well, I believe. So definitely a good guy to run a military school. And he's also taken a big liking to opening the school up to allowing kids to have alcohol in their rooms and everything, which has been forbidden for years. They call it violation of the alcohol policy. It's a big punishment. But then, you have a lot of kids going out in these country roads, and, it takes 20 minutes to get back to campus. If you go get drunk at a bar and you crash on the way back, it's happened. And people were going all the way to Montreal because you could drink when you're 18 there from Vermont and getting into accidents on the way back, falling asleep at the wheel or, being drunk, whatever. So it makes sense, You're out in the middle of the country, you ought to allow the kids to grow up, basically. Get that opportunity to learn responsibility and, how to handle it. And then just to develop programs to handle the people that abuse it. Punish them for that. So this is a very smart guy. He's got a lot of good ideas, and I'm hoping I might be a little bit involved in the transition to that MMA program, or even bringing boxing back. I hope that materializes at some point. But I'm gonna shoot him an email about it because I just heard about it last week. I haven't had a chance to really sit down and introduce myself to this guy, but. I've got the Air Force connection. I got the boxing thing, and I'm sure he'll be interested in chatting about it. So maybe we'll have him on as a guest. I know he was also he got in a little bit of a newsreel viral situation. He was on CNN. What's his name? Anderson Cooper interviewed him because for a little while, to show solidarity with the students, he actually stayed in the dorms with the kids. And it's funny because he told a story on CNN that while he was in the dorms, he heard a lot of different music that he wasn't used to. He's like a jazz guy. He likes soft rock or whatever. I don't know. But he started hearing some Post Malone, and all of a sudden now he's a big Post Malone fan. And he bonded with the kids in the hallway over their choice of music and, learning about different music styles. So that's kind of interesting. But I think that all stemmed from a promise when he became president before COVID came in. And he said that he was going to allow kids to stay at his mansion while he stayed in their rooms as like a random program. Like one kid would just get selected to go live in the president's mansion for the night. And COVID killed that idea, so I don't know if that's ever really going to get off the ground, but that was a funny one. Anyway, that's my soapbox moment of the week. So we'll wrap it up, and until next week, thanks for stopping by.
All right, guys.
Adios.
Enjoy the fights this weekend.
All right.